You think you are a law-abiding citizen? You are wrong. In modern America, you can be treated like a hardened criminal for mowing your lawn too early, owning a hammock, or just standing still on a sidewalk. We found the most insane, wallet-draining penalties that prove the government will find a way to fine you for literally anything. Here are 49 reasons to hide your wallet and never leave your house again. 1. A Pennsylvania woman was hit with a staggering $400 fine because her house was apparently the headquarters of an illicit criminal empire. An 8-year-old's lemonade stand. The city government swooped in, demanding to see a business permit for a folding table and a pitcher of sugar water. It turns out that childhood entrepreneurship is a serious threat to public safety unless you pay the local bureaucracy their protection money. You have to wonder what kind of city budget relies on shaking down second graders just to keep the lights on at City Hall. 2. Down in Missouri, a woman learned the hard way that relaxation is a heavily regulated government activity. She was slapped with a $250 fine for hanging a hammock in her backyard without obtaining a permit first. The officials claimed she needed structural approval to tie a piece of fabric between two trees, treating a Sunday nap like it was a skyscraper construction project. I didn't realize you needed a degree in civil engineering just to swing slightly in the breeze on your own property, but apparently gravity requires a license now. 3. A Florida resident found herself $300 poorer because she left her sprinklers on too long for the city's liking. They cited strict water conservation rules, which would almost make sense if her neighbor didn't have a massive swimming pool that was completely legal. So, let me get this straight. Keeping your grass alive is an environmental crime, but maintaining a private lagoon of 20,000 gallons of chlorinated water is totally fine? The logic here is about as clear as the water in the Everglades, but hey, the city got paid. 4. In Texas, a farmer faced a $600 penalty for the heinous crime of growing too many pumpkins. He was prepping for a fall festival, but the local bureaucrats decided he had exceeded the legal limit of festive gourds and demanded a seasonal produce permit. Since when is there a cap on the vegetable production? Was the city worried about a black market pumpkin ring taking over the streets? It is comforting to know that while actual crime happens, the authorities are laser-focused on regulating the density of the pumpkin patch. 5. You would think that in Alaska, smelling like the ocean comes with the territory, but one fisherman was fined $400 for smelling too much like fish inside a grocery store. Security actually called the cops because a shopper in the checkout line was offended by his aroma. This has to be the most ironic fine in history. Penalizing an Alaskan for smelling like salmon is like walking into a Texas BBQ joint and suing because it smells like smoke. If your delicate nose can't handle the smell of the industry that built the state, maybe stick to buying frozen fish sticks. 6. A homeowner in Nevada decided to fight the boring aesthetic of suburbia by installing a custom-made R2-D2 mailbox, and the city promptly thanked him with a $500 fine. They claimed all mail receptacles must be government-approved, effectively declaring war on the Rebel Alliance. It is amazing how much energy local councils spend crushing a tiny bit of creativity. Apparently, receiving your bills is a serious matter that cannot be tainted by Star Wars references. I guess these are not the mailboxes they were looking for. 7. Back in Florida, the authorities decided to crack down on a dangerous criminal element, a man feeding the homeless. He was hit with a $250 citation for unauthorized food distribution. In the eyes of the city, the problem isn't that people are starving on the streets. The problem is that someone tried to help them without filing the proper paperwork in triplicate first. The guy paid the fine and went right back to feeding people, which makes him a legend, and the city looked like absolute villains. 8. We have officially reached peak insanity in Arizona, where a child was fined $100 for running too fast on a playground. A park worker actually claimed the kid's velocity could intimidate the other children, as if he was breaking the sound barrier near the sandbox. Since when do playgrounds have speed traps? If a kid running is considered a threat to public order, maybe those other children need to toughen up a little bit. Next thing you know, they will be issuing tickets for swinging too high or sliding with reckless abandon. 9. In Alaska, a man discovered that holiday cheer has a strict expiration date when he was slapped with a $500 fine. His crime? Leaving his Christmas decorations up until July. The city officials labeled this heinous act as a prolonged seasonal display because clearly, some tinsel on a porch is a threat to the structural integrity of society. I know Alaska has long nights, but this is ridiculous. Someone better warn Santa Claus that if he parks his sleigh for more than 20 minutes, he is getting towed. Apparently, in the last frontier, you can freeze to death, but you cannot be festive out of season. 10. A man in South Dakota walked into a restaurant looking for a burger and walked out with a $375 fine. The manager claimed his backward baseball cap violated the dress code. Here is the kicker. Baseball caps were perfectly allowed, just not facing the rear. So now, the rotation of your headwear is a legal matter? Are we going to start regulating the angle of our shoelaces or the tightness of our belts next? It seems the fashion police have been deputized with actual citation power, and they really hate the 90s aesthetic. 11. Being friendly in Illinois can apparently cost you a fortune. A man was handed a $500 fine for the crime of excessively waving at passing drivers. The police officer on the scene claimed his enthusiastic greetings could potentially confuse motorists, treating a friendly hello like it was a complex traffic signal. I didn't realize a hand wave was considered a road hazard comparable to black ice or a deer crossing. From now on, I guess we should all just stare blankly at each other to avoid a ticket. If you smile too hard, they might just arrest you for disturbing the peace. 12. Down in South Carolina, a resident received a $200 fine for having excessively loud wind chimes. A neighbor actually complained that the sounds were too soothing to be ignored and disrupted their concentration. Since when is being too relaxed a valid reason to call the authorities? Usually, noise complaints are for death metal bands or jackhammers, not the gentle tinkling of metal tubes in a breeze. At this rate, they are going to start fining birds for chirping too aggressively or the ocean for crashing too loudly against the shore. 13. A university student in Texas was actually fined for sleeping in a public library. He wasn't snoring loudly or drooling on the books. He simply had his head resting on the table while studying for finals. Security claimed it was a violation of a policy intended to prevent homelessness in the building, but they applied it to an exhausted student taking a 5-minute power nap. Since when is resting your eyes a crime in a quiet zone? If libraries are strictly for being wide awake, maybe they should start serving double espressos at the door instead of just judging people. 14. An Illinois bar found itself in hot water and out $300 for serving drinks that were deemed too colorful. The city regulators argued that neon cocktails could be mistaken for energy drinks and posed a public safety risk. Because apparently, adults are incapable of distinguishing between a margarita and a Gatorade unless the government intervenes. First, they banned certain ingredients, and now they are policing the visible light spectrum of your beverage. If your drink glows in the dark, just drink it quickly before the fun police arrive to confiscate it. 15. A Colorado homeowner was hit with a $250 fine, not for leaving lights up too long, but because his Christmas lights were not festive enough. His homeowners association claimed the display didn't meet community standards and lacked sufficient color. It is terrifying to think that a group of neighbors has the legal power to quantify your holiday spirit and find it lacking. Who knew the Grinch was actually the president of the local HOA? If you don't dazzle the neighborhood with a blinding light show, you are literally paying for it. 16. In Texas, where sports are basically a religion, a resident got slapped with a $450 fine for clapping too loudly at a game. The stadium cited a respectful cheering policy, stating his enthusiasm crossed the line. Imagine going to a live sporting event and being told to express your joy at a moderate, library-appropriate volume. Are we supposed to just politely golf clap when someone scores a touchdown? If you can't lose your mind at a game, you might as well stay home and yell at your television where it is free. 17. A North Carolina teenager was fined $200 for skateboarding in an unauthorized manner. No, he wasn't destroying property or skating in traffic. The authorities claimed he was skating too casually and not utilizing the designated skate lanes. What does that even mean? Is there a government handbook on the correct posture for riding a piece of wood with wheels? It sounds like he was fined for simply looking too cool while moving from point A to point B. Next, they will be issuing tickets for walking with too much swagger. 18. In California, a man was fined simply for having a dirty car parked in his own driveway. The city code stated that vehicles visible from the street must be operable and well-maintained, and apparently, a layer of dust constitutes a blight on the neighborhood. The inspector argued that his dusty sedan was lowering property values. I didn't realize we were living in a military barracks where vehicle inspection happens at dawn. If I want to write "wash me in the dirt" on my own bumper, that is my God-given right as an American, not a reason for a citation. 19. In Oregon, a woman was fined $275 for collecting rainwater on her own property. The state actually argued that the rain technically belonged to the public, and she needed a specific permit to gather it in a barrel. Think about the audacity of that claim. The government is literally taxing the weather now. If they claim ownership of the water falling from the sky, are they also responsible for the damage it causes? Be careful enjoying that sunshine tomorrow. They might send you a bill for solar usage. 20. A man in New Jersey was hit with a $250 fine for playing music too loudly, which sounds standard until you realize he was wearing headphones. A fellow bus passenger complained that they could hear the faint thump of the bass leaking out. Apparently, having sensitive hearing is now grounds for legal action. If your headphones are powerful enough to get you a noise violation citation, the fine should probably go to the manufacturer for creating a weapon of mass distraction. It is ridiculous that you can be penalized for a private concert happening exclusively inside your own head. 21. In California, a homeowner found himself trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare that cost him $500. First, the city fined him for not mowing his lawn to their specific aesthetic standards. Terrified of further penalties, he rushed to cut it, only for his neighbor to report him for mowing too early in the morning. The result? Another fine, this time for noise disturbance. It is the ultimate lose-lose situation where the only way to win is to probably replace your lawn with green concrete and hope nobody complains about the shade of paint. 22. A New York man learned that happiness is a regulated emotion when he was fined $50 for laughing too loudly inside his own home. A neighbor actually called the police to complain that his laughter was excessively disturbing. The punchline? The guy was just watching a stand-up comedy special. Imagine living in a world where enjoying a joke is a ticketable offense. From now on, I guess we all need to practice our silent, internal chuckles to avoid the wrath of the fun police. If laughter is the best medicine, in New York it is apparently a controlled substance. 23. Another win for New York logic happened when a woman was slapped with a $300 fine for the crime of eating a sandwich on a park bench. The city claimed the area had a strict no-food rule, which might make sense if there weren't licensed food vendors selling hot dogs just a few feet away. So, buying the food is legal, and carrying the food is legal, but putting the food in your mouth while sitting down is a crime against humanity? I am trying to find the logic here, but I think I would have better luck finding a quiet spot in Times Square. 24. In Arkansas, a man was fined $450 for playing his car radio too loudly, despite the fact that he was sitting in his own driveway. A neighbor called the cops even though the car engine wasn't even running. He wasn't cruising through a quiet neighborhood. He was parked on his own property. Since when did a Toyota Camry become a nightclub that requires a permit? It seems you can now get a moving violation without actually moving. Next time, he should just hum the song quietly to avoid a noise complaint. 25. A man in Washington was fined $200 for eating a popsicle too messily in a public park. A park ranger actually approached him and claimed that his dripping treat was attracting bees, thereby classifying him as a public nuisance. I didn't realize there was a dignified, government-approved method for consuming frozen sugar water on a stick. If attracting insects is a crime, every flower in that park should be under arrest immediately. Maybe next time he should bring a bib and a lawyer just to enjoy a summer snack. 26. A Virginia man found himself $250 poorer for the crime of cursing in public. He tripped on a cracked sidewalk, which the city had failed to repair, and let out a frustrated expletive. A nearby officer immediately cited him for profane language. So, let's get this straight. The city can leave dangerous tripping hazards all over the place, but if you verbally react to your pain, you are the criminal? Next time, I guess he should just smile, break his ankle, and thank the government for the opportunity to use their crumbling infrastructure. 27. In Colorado, a man trying to do the responsible thing was fined $300 for shoveling snow into the wrong part of his own yard. The city officials claimed his piling technique could create inconsistent snow distribution. Ah yes, because when a blizzard hits, nature is deeply concerned with the aesthetic symmetry of the snowdrifts. It is amazing that the government has time to micromanage frozen water placement while the rest of the world is just trying to not slip on the ice. Next, they will issue fines for building snowmen that are not structurally sound. 28. A Virginia resident was hit with a $500 fine for the botanical crime of using the wrong type of grass in his front yard. The city code required specific, approved vegetation to maintain a uniform look across the neighborhood. I can sleep soundly at night, knowing the government is protecting us from the dangers of unauthorized fescue and rogue bluegrass. It is truly the land of the free, unless you want to plant a slightly different shade of green ground cover, in which case you are a rebel who must be punished. 29. A woman in New York received a $400 fine for wearing a bikini that was deemed too revealing on a public beach. Here is where it gets insane. Right next to her, a topless sunbather was completely legal thanks to state nudity laws. So let me get this straight. Showing everything is perfectly fine and protected by law, but covering up just a tiny bit of it is illegal? The logic here is so twisted you would need a map to follow it. Apparently, fabric is the offense, not the skin. Make it make sense. 30. In Nevada, a woman was fined $600 for taking too long to pick out fruit at a grocery store. A vigilant store employee accused her of loitering in the produce section because she spent more than 10 minutes selecting the perfect apples. Imagine having to explain that on a job application. I have a criminal record because I wanted a Honeycrisp without bruises. We are living in a world where being indecisive about your dietary fiber intake is considered a threat to retail security. Shop fast or face the consequences. 31. Down in Louisiana, a woman was fined $75 for wearing high heels on a wooden boardwalk. The city has a specific ordinance against it, claiming that sharp heels could damage the precious wooden planks. It is the only place in America where you can be penalized for trying to look fabulous on a casual stroll. I guess you are supposed to carry a pair of emergency slippers just in case the terrain changes. It brings a whole new meaning to the phrase fashion victim. Only this time, the victim is your bank account. 32. In Tennessee, a man was fined $400 for singing in his car while stopped at a red light. A nearby police officer claimed his excessive vocal enthusiasm was a distraction to other drivers. So, road rage is a problem, but road joy is a crime? I guess car karaoke is now a punishable offense. Somebody better warn James Corden before he films an episode in Nashville and gets thrown in the slammer. If you are happy and you know it, keep your mouth shut and your hands on the wheel. 33. A Michigan resident was fined $500 for letting their grass grow too short. Usually, the HOA comes after you for letting it get too wild. But this time, they claimed his lawn was half an inch under regulation height. You have to imagine a grown adult on their hands and knees with a ruler, measuring blades of grass just to issue a citation. It is a level of pettiness that is almost impressive if it wasn't so expensive. Maybe he should just paint the dirt green and call it a day. 34. In Ohio, a resident was slapped with a $150 fine for the crime of leaving their trash cans at the curb for too long. They brought the bins in a few hours after getting home from work. But the strict city ordinance required them to be hidden away by noon. Because apparently, the mere sight of a plastic bin is so offensive, it ruins the aesthetic of the entire neighborhood. I hope the city inspector enjoys digging through the garbage, because that is exactly where this ridiculous rule belongs, along with the rest of their bureaucracy. 35. A Wisconsin resident was slapped with a $300 fine for the crime of walking their cat without a leash. The city's pet laws apparently don't distinguish between a golden retriever and a fiercely independent feline. Have you ever tried to put a leash on a cat? It is like trying to harness a cloud of angry razors. The cat doesn't walk. It just flops over and judges you. The real crime here isn't the lack of a leash. It's the fact that someone actually tried to take a cat for a walk in the first place. 36. In Louisiana, the fashion police are real, and they operate out of a high school principal's office. A teenager was handed a $250 fine for the heinous offense of wearing mismatched socks. The administration claimed it was a disruptive fashion choice that could distract other students from their studies. Meanwhile, another kid walked down the same hall with neon green hair, and nobody blinked an eye. Apparently, two different colored socks are a threat to the educational system, but looking like a radioactive superhero is perfectly acceptable. 37. A woman in Kentucky decided to make cardio slightly less miserable by jogging in a full-body dinosaur costume, and the city rewarded her with a $200 fine. Someone actually reported her as a public disturbance, presumably because seeing a T-Rex running down the sidewalk is too much excitement for one afternoon. It seems that being boring is mandatory, and creativity is a punishable offense. If she had been wearing sweaty gym clothes, nobody would have cared but put on a prehistoric suit to make people smile, and suddenly you are a criminal. 38. A teenager in Utah was fined $200 for driving without a destination. He was caught cruising down Main Street more than 3 times in a 2-hour window, which the city labeled as unnecessary repetitive driving. I didn't realize we needed to file a flight plan just to drive a car we pay taxes on roads we pay taxes for. They call it cruising. I call it using the vehicle I own. If driving in circles is a serious crime, then every NASCAR driver in the country should be serving a life sentence right now. 39. A South Carolina man was hit with a $400 fine for walking his dog too early in the morning. A grumpy neighbor complained that the jingling of the dog's metal tags constituted a noise disturbance. The level of pettiness here is off the charts, especially considering that same neighbor fired up a lawnmower at 6 in the morning the very next day without any consequences. I guess the sound of a combustion engine is the song of freedom, but a dog walking quietly is a felony. It proves that noise ordinances are just weapons for people who hate their neighbors. 40. In Nevada, a man was fined $150 for jaywalking across a street that was completely devoid of traffic. There were no cars, no other pedestrians, and no danger whatsoever. Just him and a police officer with way too much free time. It is the definition of a victimless crime. Who was he endangering? The invisible cars? It feels like the officer just needed to hit a monthly quota. If you have ever been fined for something this ridiculous, let me know in the comments, because this level of bureaucracy deserves to be shamed. 41. A farmer in North Dakota was fined $500 because his sunflowers had the audacity to be too tall. The town enforced a strict height limit for plants to maintain a uniform aesthetic, effectively declaring war on photosynthesis. Imagine punishing a plant for being successful at growing. Are we going to start fining the sun for shining too brightly, or the rain for falling too wet? It is bizarre that in a place known for agriculture, having crops that grow big and strong is considered a code violation rather than an achievement. 42. In Pennsylvania, a woman was fined $300 for using too many napkins at a local cafe. The owner accused her of wasting resources because she grabbed more than 3 paper squares. I didn't realize that wiping your hands had become a luxury service with a surcharge. At that price, those napkins better be made of silk and gold leaf. It is a sad day when basic hygiene is treated like a crime against the environment. Next time, just wipe your hands on your shirt. It is cheaper than the fine. 43. A woman in Georgia received a $200 fine for the crime of walking home too slowly. Police stopped her and accused her of loitering because she paused on the sidewalk to check her phone while strolling. Since when is taking your time a criminal offense? Do we all need to power walk from point A to point B to avoid suspicion? Apparently, if you are not moving at a brisk, purposeful pace, the government assumes you are up to no good. It brings a whole new meaning to the phrase, walk it off. 44. In California, a man was fined $600 for having overly enthusiastic Halloween decorations. The Homeowners Association argued that his spooky setup was too realistic and could cause unnecessary fear among the neighbors. So, being too good at your job is now a violation? He basically got fined for winning Halloween. Should we all just put a single, sad pumpkin on the porch and call it a day so nobody gets scared? If your decorations are terrifying enough to get the HOA involved, you should get a trophy, not a ticket. 45. A Nebraska woman was fined $250 for taking a picture of her own house. A paranoid neighbor saw her snapping a photo and reported her for suspicious behavior, claiming she looked like she was casing the neighborhood for a robbery. Imagine getting a criminal record for admiring your own property. You literally pay the mortgage, but you are not allowed to look at it through a lens without causing a panic. It is a perfect example of see something, say something, gone completely wrong. 46. A Florida couple was fined almost $500 for holding a garage sale without a proper license. They were just trying to get rid of some old baby clothes and a broken toaster, but the city treated it like they were running an unlicensed Walmart franchise right on their lawn. They sold about $40 worth of junk and ended up owing the government 10 times that amount in penalties. It is a brilliant business model for the city. Let citizens clean up their houses and then rob them blind for the privilege of recycling their old stuff. 47. In Georgia, a homeowner was fined $375 for having an excessively large garden gnome in her yard. The Homeowners Association claimed it was a visual distraction for passing drivers, as if a ceramic dwarf is going to cause a pileup on the highway. I find it hilarious that during the holidays, people put up 20-foot inflatable Santas without an issue, but one oversized gnome is where they draw the line. It seems the HOA just has a prejudice against mythical creatures with pointy hats. 48. A Michigan woman received a $150 fine for parking in her own driveway. The issue wasn't that she blocked the sidewalk, it was that her tires were slightly touching the grass next to the pavement. The city labeled it an improper parking violation. It proves that sometimes your biggest enemy isn't the criminal underworld. It is a city inspector with a tape measure and a bad attitude. You need the precision of a stunt driver just to park at your own house without owing the government money. 49. Finally, a Tennessee man was fined $300 for honking his horn aggressively at a slow driver. The officer claimed the noise was a disturbance to the peace, ignoring the fact that the guy was trying to wake up a driver who was texting through a green light. So, let's get this straight. Using a safety device to alert a distracted driver is illegal, but holding up traffic because you are scrolling through Instagram is totally fine. It is a backward world where the solution is punished and the problem gets to drive away scot-free. That was 49 pieces of absolute proof that common sense is legally dead. Now, I want you to get angry. Which one of these petty fines would you have absolutely refused to pay, even if it meant spending a night in jail? Tell me in the comments which one would make you snap and fight the cop. Hit that like button if you hate bureaucracy, and subscribe right now, before they figure out how to tax you for watching YouTube.